Elias stared at the small glass bottle on his kitchen counter. The liquid inside shimmered with an unnatural silver-green glow. A stranger had left it at his door with no note, no explanation, just the words "Drink Emmy" scrawled on a yellow sticky note. He picked up the bottle and held it under the dim apartment light. Tiny particles drifted lazily through the liquid like living dust, his reflection warped in the curved glass. His fingers trembled slightly. Elias uncorked the bottle. A faint metallic smell rose from the opening. He brought it to his lips and hesitated. His heart pounded against his ribs. He had no reason to trust this, but he had nothing else to lose. He tilted the bottle and drank everything in one long swallow. The liquid burned cold down his throat. He coughed and gripped the edge of the counter as his vision blurred for a moment. The empty bottle slipped from his fingers and shattered on the tiled floor. Elias pressed both palms flat against the counter. His breathing became ragged. Something was moving inside his chest, crawling through his veins like tiny insects. A sudden electric shock traveled from his sternum to his fingertips. Elias gasped and stumbled backward. His vision flickered. A screen appeared in his right eye, floating text etched against reality itself. Bright green letters read, "System 1 activated. Earn credits through completed missions." Before he could react, red letters burned into his left eye. "System 2 activated. Pay to live. Daily deadline. Failure to pay WILL terminate heart function." Elias squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them again, both screens remained. A green number glowed in the corner of his vision, 0 credits. A red number next to it, 18 hours remaining. He stumbled to the bathroom mirror and stared at his own reflection. His pupils had changed. Green and red specks swirled slowly inside the irises. He touched his face with shaking hands. The nanobots were real. The green screen flickered again. A new message appeared. "First mission available. Deliver package to 47 Haven Street. Reward 500 credits. Deadline 3 hours." Elias grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. He had no choice. He couldn't afford to wait. The red timer in his left eye ticked down mercilessly. He left his apartment and ran down the dim hallway. The building's old fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. His footsteps echoed against peeling paint and cracked floor tiles. Outside, rain poured across the neon-lit streets. Elias stopped under the awning. A small delivery drone hovered nearby, its single camera eye focused on him. A compartment clicked open. Inside the drone's compartment lay a sealed silver envelope. Elias grabbed it and shoved it into his jacket pocket. The green screen updated, "Package acquired. Delivery required within 2 hours and 47 minutes." He sprinted through the rain toward Haven Street. Water splashed around his worn sneakers. The green timer ticked down steadily. He dodged pedestrians and jumped over flooded gutters. Elias reached 47 Haven Street, an abandoned electronics shop with barred windows and a rusted sign. He tried the front door. Locked. He circled around to the back alley. A woman stood in the alley entrance, partially hidden under a broken streetlight. She wore a long black coat and held an umbrella. Her eyes glowed faintly green and red. "You're the new one," she said quietly. Elias stopped several meters away. Rain dripped from his soaked hair. His jaw tightened. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "Someone who made the same mistake. Give me the package." He pulled the envelope from his pocket but didn't hand it over. "What's inside?" The woman stepped closer. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement. "Your survival and mine." Elias hesitated. The green timer flickered, 2 HOURS 12 minutes. The red timer, 15 HOURS 48 minutes. He held the package against his chest. "Why should I trust you?" The woman sighed and lowered her umbrella. Rain soaked her dark hair. "Because I know how to stop the nanobots. I've been running for 3 years. I found the creator." Elias' breath caught. His grip on the envelope loosened slightly. "The creator? Who is it?" The woman pointed at the silver package. "The answer is inside. Open it and see." He tore the envelope open with trembling fingers. Inside was a single photograph. A man in a white lab coat stood beside a massive machine. Below the image, handwritten text read, "Dr. Arisvoss, you are his third experiment." Elias looked up sharply. The woman was gone. The alley stood empty. Only rain and the flickering streetlight remained. He clutched the photograph in his wet hands. The green screen flashed, "Delivery completed. Reward 500 credits." The red screen immediately updated, "Payment due, 450 credits deducted, remaining balance 50 credits. Next deadline 14 HOURS 32 minutes. Elias sank against the wet brick wall. He had gained 500 credits. He had lost 450 in less than a second. His hands shook. The photograph slipped from his fingers and landed in a puddle. He picked it up carefully and studied the face of Dr. Arisvoss. The man's eyes were sharp, calculating. Behind him, the machine glowed with thousands of tiny green and red lights. Elias looked at his reflection in the puddle. Green and red specks still swirled in his eyes. He pressed his palm against his chest and felt his heartbeat steady, but for how long? The red timer continued ticking. He stood up slowly and pocketed the photograph. The rain began to lighten. Somewhere across the city, Dr. Voss was still running his experiments, and Elias had just become part of the game. A new green message appeared, "Second mission available. Locate Dr. VOSS Laboratory, reward 10,000 credits, deadline 72 hours. Warning, multiple participants will compete for the same reward." Elias closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. The weight of the red timer pressed against his chest. He opened his eyes and started walking toward the city center. One step at a time, one mission at a time, before the nanobot stopped his heart forever. Ilias pulled out his phone from his jacket pocket. The screen was cracked and wet. He opened a digital map. A single blinking dot appeared near the industrial district. His thumb traced the route. He looked up from his phone and saw a figure standing across the street. A young man in a hooded black jacket stared back at him. Their eyes met. The stranger's pupils glowed faintly green and red. Another participant. Ilias turned sharply and walked in the opposite direction. His heart pounded. The stranger began following him at a steady pace. Rain continued to fall between them. He ducked into a crowded night market. Steam rose from food stalls. Neon signs buzzed overhead. Ilias wove through groups of people, glancing back over his shoulder. The hooded figure had disappeared into the crowd. A new green mission screen appeared. Retrieve data chip from SAFEHOUSC 12B, reward 2,000 credits. Deadline 45 minutes. The red timer showed 12 HOURS 17 minutes remaining. Ilias ran through the wet streets toward the safe house address. His sneakers splashed through puddles. His breathing was heavy and uneven. His chest ached with every heartbeat. He arrived at an old storage building with a rusted metal door. The number 12B was barely visible above the entrance. He tried the door. It was locked with a digital keypad. Ilias examined the keypad. He noticed a faint green glow on the number 4 button. He pressed it. The lock clicked open. He pushed the heavy door inward and stepped inside. The safe house was small and cluttered. Shelves lined the walls filled with old electronics. A single dim bulb hung from the ceiling. Dust floated in the weak light. A small metal box sat on a desk in the center. He opened the metal box. Inside lay a glowing green data chip no larger than his thumbnail. He picked it up carefully. The green screen updated, data chip acquired, delivered to drop point 4 reward. Heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. Ilias froze. He pocketed the data chip and pressed himself against the wall beside the door. His hand covered his mouth to silence his breathing. The door burst open. A large man with a shaved head and glowing green eyes stepped inside. He wore a black tactical vest. A metal baton hung from his belt. "Give me the chip," he growled. Ilias lunged forward and shoved the man against the shelf. Electronics crashed to the floor. The man swung his baton. Ilias ducked and scrambled past him toward the open doorway. He sprinted down the hallway and burst out into the rain. His heart hammered. He glanced back. The large man was already in pursuit, his heavy footsteps splashing through the puddles. Ilias turned a corner and slid into a narrow gap between two dumpsters. He pressed his back against the cold metal and held his breath. The large man ran past without stopping. Ilias slowly exhaled. He crawled out from between the dumpsters. His jacket was torn and covered in grime. His hands trembled. He checked the data chip in his pocket, still there. He whispered a quiet thank you. The green screen flashed. Delivery drop point updated. Reward ready. He walked toward the designated location, an old payphone booth at the end of the street. Rain drummed on the booth's glass roof. He entered the payphone booth and placed the data chip on the metal shelf. A small panel opened in the wall. A mechanical arm extended, grabbed the chip and retracted. The green screen updated. Reward received. 2,000 credits added. The red screen immediately appeared. Payment due. 1,800 credits deducted. Remaining balance 250 credits. Next deadline 10 HOURS 44 minutes. Ilias slammed his fist against the payphone glass. The panel cracked. His breath fogged the glass. He had earned 2,000 credits. He lost 1,800 in an instant. His face twisted with frustration. He stepped out of the booth and leaned against the wet wall. His gray eyes stared blankly at the city skyline. A faint glow pulsed inside his chest. The nanobots were draining him. He needed a bigger score. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I know where Voss is hiding. Meet me at the old clock tower. Come alone. The woman from the alley." He stared at the message for a long moment. Ilias looked toward the clock tower in the distance. Its hands pointed to 2:47 a.m. Rain veiled its silhouette. He had no reason to trust her, but he had no other leads. He started walking. 20 minutes later, he stood at the base of the clock tower. The structure was ancient and abandoned. Vines climbed its stone walls. A single light glowed from the top floor window. She was waiting. He climbed the spiral staircase slowly. Each step creaked beneath his weight. His legs burned with exhaustion. He hadn't slept in over 24 hours. His vision blurred briefly, then cleared. He reached the top floor. The woman stood by a large clock mechanism, her back to him. She wore the same long black coat. Her umbrella was folded and resting against the wall. She didn't turn around. "You came," she said quietly. Her voice echoed in the dusty room. Ilias stopped several meters away. "You said you knew where Voss is. Tell me." The woman slowly turned to face him. Her face was pale and marked with exhaustion. Her green and red eyes looked tired. "I was his first experiment, the woman from earlier. I escaped 10 years ago." She pulled back her sleeve, revealing a scarred arm with faint glowing veins. Ilias stepped closer. "How do I find him?" She pointed to a map spread across a wooden table. A red circle marked a location deep in the industrial district. Underground lab hidden beneath an abandoned factory. He studied the map, his finger traced the route. "Why are you helping me?" The woman smiled bitterly. "Because I want him dead and I can't do it alone." She held out her hand. "Partners." Ilias hesitated. He looked at her scarred arm, then at the red timer glowing in his vision. He had 10 hours left. He reached out and shook her hand. Her grip was firm. "Partners," he said quietly. They descended the clock tower together. Rain had stopped. The sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. The streets were empty and silent. Their footsteps echoed in unison. They reached the industrial district by sunrise. Massive abandoned factories loomed on both sides. Broken windows reflected the orange morning light. Smoke rose from distant chimneys. The air smelled of rust and metal. The woman stopped in front of Factory 7. She pointed to a side entrance covered in overgrown weeds. The lab is 40 meters underground. There's a freight elevator behind that door. Elias pushed through the weeds and tried the door. It was unlocked. He pulled it open. A dark corridor stretched ahead. The woman followed closely behind. Their breathing was the only sound. They reached a large freight elevator with rusted metal gates. Elias pulled the gate open. The elevator car was old and dusty. A single button glowed red on the control panel. The woman pressed it. The elevator descended slowly. The cables groaned and creaked. Dust shook from the ceiling. Elias gripped the railing. His heart pounded. The red timer in his eye flickered. 8 HOURS 22 minutes remaining. The elevator stopped with a jolt. The gates opened onto a bright white corridor. Clean floors, fluorescent lights, sterile walls. A complete contrast to the rust above. The woman stepped out first. She walked down the corridor and stopped before a massive steel door. A retinal scanner glowed on the wall beside it. She turned to Elias. I can't open it. My biometrics were wiped from his system, but yours are fresh. Elias stepped forward. He pressed his eye against the scanner. A green light flashed. The steel door hissed open. Beyond it, a massive laboratory stretched out. Machines hummed. Glass tubes lined the walls. And in the center, Dr. Eris Voss stood waiting. Elias stepped through the steel door into the massive laboratory. Dr. Eris Voss stood in the center, a tall man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and cold blue eyes. His white lab coat was immaculate. He smiled slowly. You're the third, Voss said, his voice calm and measured. I've been waiting for you to arrive. Elias stopped 10 meters away. The woman remained at the doorway. Her hand trembled slightly against the frame. Voss gestured to the machines around him. Thousands of glass tubes lined the walls, each containing a floating green or red particle. The machines hummed with a low, constant vibration. The air smelled of ozone and metal. Why are you doing this? Elias demanded. His voice echoed across the lab. His fists clenched at his sides. The green and red timers flickered in his vision. 7 HOURS 49 minutes remaining. Voss laughed softly. I'm saving humanity. The nanobots are the next step in evolution. You should be grateful. He walked toward a large console covered in screens displaying vital signs. Green and red data streams flowed across the monitors. Elias took a step forward. You're killing people. The red system, it stops hearts if they can't pay. Voss turned sharply. His expression hardened. It motivates them. Without pressure, people become lazy. The system makes them fight for their lives. The woman stepped forward, her black coat brushing against a glass tube, her face twisted with rage. You turned me into a monster. 10 years of running, 10 years of fear. Voss looked at her coldly. You were my finest work. Elias moved to stand beside the woman. His gray eyes burned with green and red light. We're shutting this down tonight. Voss smiled again. You can't shut down what's inside your own chest. A green screen appeared before Elias. Emergency mission. Neutralized doctor. VOSS. Reward 50,000 credits. Deadline 30 minutes. His eyes widened. The reward was enormous. The red timer showed 7 hours 12 minutes. Voss pressed a button on his console. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the laboratory. I've activated Protocol 7. All subjects in the facility will converge here. He stepped back toward a hidden door behind him. Elias lunged forward, but Voss disappeared through the hidden door before he could reach him. The door slid shut and locked. Elias slammed his fists against the cold metal. The woman ran to the console. She scanned the screens frantically. I can override the lockdown, but I need 5 minutes. Elias looked at the lab entrance. Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. Multiple sets, they were coming. 5 minutes, Elias said. He turned and faced the steel door. His hands shook. He grabbed a metal pipe from a nearby workbench. The footsteps grew louder. The door began to slide open. 3 figures burst through the entrance. Men and women with glowing green and red eyes, their faces twisted with desperation. They wore tattered clothes. The nanobots had driven them insane. They charged toward Elias. Elias swung the pipe and struck the first attacker across the chest. The man stumbled back but didn't fall. Another lunged at him from the side. Elias dodged and shoved her into a glass tube. The glass shattered. Green and red particles burst into the air, swirling like glowing fireflies. Elias covered his mouth and coughed. The particles settled on his skin, absorbing into his pores. His vision flickered with warning messages. The woman shouted from the console, 5 more seconds. Elias blocked another strike with the pipe. His arms ached. His chest burned. The red timer pulsed violently. 6 HOURS 55 minutes. The console beeped. Got it. The woman pressed a final button. The laboratory doors slammed shut. The attacking subjects froze, disoriented by the sudden lockdown. Elias slumped against the wall, gasping. He looked at the woman. She was pale and sweating. Her fingers flew across the console. Voss is in sublevel 3. There's an escape tunnel down there. We have to move now before he reaches it. Elias pushed himself off the wall. His legs trembled but held. He grabbed the pipe and followed her to a service elevator at the back of the lab. The doors slid open with a creak. They stepped inside. The elevator descended deeper underground. The walls were rough concrete, water dripped from the ceiling, the air grew cold and damp. Elias' breath fogged in front of him. The red timer flickered 6 hours 18 minutes. The elevator stopped, the doors opened onto a dark tunnel. A single row of lights lined the ceiling, flickering weakly. Far ahead, a figure ran through the dim glow. Voss, his white lab coat was unmistakable. Elias sprinted down the tunnel, his sneakers slapped against the wet concrete. The woman followed close behind, their footsteps echoed in the narrow space. Voss glanced back, then ran faster. They reached a fork in the tunnel, left and right passages stretched into darkness. Elias stopped. Which way? The woman pointed left. The escape pod is that direction, he'll try to get to it. They ran left, the tunnel sloped upward. A faint blue light appeared at the end, an underground dock. A small metallic escape pod sat on a launch rail. Voss was climbing into it, his hands working frantically on the controls. Stop, Elias screamed. He threw the metal pipe. It clattered against the pod's hull. Voss looked up, his face twisted with panic. He slammed the launch button. The pod's engines roared to life. Elias lunged forward and grabbed the pod's exterior handle. The pod began to move along the rail. Elias held on, his body dragging against the concrete floor. Sparks flew from his sneakers. His grip slipped. The woman grabbed his jacket and pulled. Let go, you'll be crushed. Elias' fingers lost their grip. He tumbled onto the floor as the pod accelerated down the rail and disappeared into a tunnel in the ceiling. He lay on the ground, gasping for air. His jacket was torn, his palms were bleeding. The woman knelt beside him, her face showed exhaustion and defeat. He's gone, he escaped. Elias closed his eyes, his chest heaved. The red timer glowed in his vision, 5 hours 42 minutes. The green screen appeared, mission failure, 10,000 credits penalty applied, remaining balance negative 9,750 credits. His heart skipped, he sat up sharply. Negative credits, what happens now? The woman looked away, her voice was barely a whisper. If your balance stays negative for more than an hour, the nanobots stop your heart. Elias scrambled to his feet, his hands were shaking. How do I fix it? How do I get credits back? The woman pointed to a console on the launch platform. Emergency missions, high risk, high reward, but you have less than an hour. He ran to the console and slammed his hand on the screen. A list of missions appeared, all of them were dangerous. All had high rewards, he scrolled frantically. His eyes stopped on one, Terminate VOSS backup system, reward 15,000 credits. That's it, he said. Where is the backup system? The woman studied the console. Sublevel 5, the core, but it's heavily guarded by automated turrets. Elias nodded. I don't care, I need those credits. They took a maintenance ladder down to sublevel 5. The walls were lined with thick cables and pipes. Heat radiated from the machinery. Sweat dripped from Elias' forehead as he climbed down. They reached the bottom, a massive room stretched before them. In the center, a towering machine pulsed with green and red light. It was the backup system. Around it, automated turrets swiveled, scanning for threats. Elias crouched behind a metal crate. He studied the turret's movement patterns. There was a gap, a 3-second window every 12 seconds. He turned to the woman. I'll run, you cover me. She pulled a small device from her pocket. I have an EMP, it'll disable them for 10 seconds, but that's all. Elias took a deep breath, his heart pounded. The red timer showed 4 hours 58 minutes. Now, he said. She activated the EMP. A wave of energy swept across the room. The turrets froze. Elias sprinted toward the core machine, his legs burned, his lungs screamed for air. He reached the core and ripped open a panel. Inside, a series of data drives glowed green and red. He grabbed the central drive and yanked it free. The machine's lights flickered and died. The turrets whirred back to life, they locked onto him. But before they could fire, the woman shouted, back to the ladder. Elias ran, bullets tore into the floor behind him. He dove for the ladder as the woman pulled him up. They climbed as fast as they could. Sweat and dust covered their faces. The turrets continued firing below them, but they were out of range. Elias reached the top and collapsed onto the platform. The green screen appeared, mission complete, 15,000 credits added, negative balance CLEARED. Remaining balance 5,250 credits. He exhaled with relief, his body trembled from exhaustion. The red screen updated, payment due, 4,700 credits deducted, remaining balance 550 credits. Next deadline 3 hours 22 minutes. Elias laughed bitterly, he had survived, but just barely. The woman sat beside him on the cold concrete floor, her face was pale and drained. You did it, she said quietly. Elias looked at her. We did it, but he's still out there. She nodded slowly. I know, and he'll rebuild, he always does. Elias stared at the ceiling. Then we find him again, and next time we don't let him escape. She looked at him, a small smile crossed her tired face. You sound like me 10 years ago. Elias returned the smile weakly. Maybe that's not a bad thing. They sat in silence for a long moment. The machines hummed faintly in the distance. The red and green timers continued their silent countdowns, but for now they were still alive. Elias stood up slowly. He offered his hand to the woman. She took it and rose to her feet. What now? She asked. He looked toward the ladder leading up. We get out of here, rest, plan, and finish this. They climbed the ladder back toward the surface. The morning light filtered through cracks in the ceiling. Dust motes danced in the golden beams. They emerged from the factory and stepped into the daylight. The city spread out before them. Smoke rose from distant towers. The streets were beginning to fill with people. Life continued, oblivious to the war being fought beneath their feet. Elias looked at his hands. They were cut and bruised. But the green and red speck still swirled in his eyes. He was still a prisoner of the systems for now. The woman stood beside him. I know a safe house, we can rest there. Elias nodded. He looked at the red timer in his vision. 2 hours 58 minutes. He had time, but not much. They walked through the city streets, blending with the crowd. Elias' torn jacket drew a few glances, but no one stopped them. The anonymity of the city was a shield. They arrived at an old apartment building. The woman led him up 4 flights of stairs to a small, sparse room. It had a bed, a table, and a window overlooking the city. It was safe. Elias sat on the edge of the bed. His body ached with exhaustion. The woman handed him a bottle of water. He drank deeply. The cold liquid soothed his parched throat. She sat across from him at the table. We need a plan. Voss will go to ground. He has other facilities. We need to find them. Elias nodded slowly. His eyelids felt heavy. Tomorrow, he said. We plan tomorrow. His voice was thick with sleep. The woman smiled softly. Rest, I'll keep watch. Elias lay back on the bed, his eyes closed. The red timer ticked silently. He dreamed of green and red lights, of running through endless tunnels, of Voss's cold smile. He woke with a gasp. The room was dark except for the city lights outside. The woman was still at the table. She looked at him. You slept 3 hours. I have information. Elias sat up. His muscles screamed, but he forced himself to listen. She pointed to a map spread across the table with new markings. I traced Voss's financial transactions. He has another lab under the old stadium. It's his main facility. Elias' eyes widened. Then that's where we go. He stood up, his legs unsteady. The woman shook her head. It's too dangerous. He'll expect us. Elias looked at her. I don't care. Every minute I'm alive with these nanobots, he wins. I'd rather die trying to stop him. She studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, we go tonight, but we need weapons and backup. Elias looked at the green screen. New missions appeared. He scrolled through them. Acquire weapons from black market, he read aloud. Reward 1,000 credits. He selected it. The green screen updated. The red timer showed 2 hours 14 minutes. He had to move fast. They left the apartment and descended into the city's underground. The black market was a maze of stalls and an abandoned subway station. Dim lights flickered. Shadows moved between vendors. Elias approached a stall selling salvage tech. The vendor was a thin man with dark eyes and a scarred face. You look like you need firepower, he said. Elias nodded. What do you have? The vendor pulled out a small energy pistol. Compact, silent, effective, 500 credits. Elias checked his balance. 550 credits. He had barely enough. He handed over the credits. He pocketed the pistol. The vendor watched him with curious eyes. You're a participant, aren't you? The green and red systems. Elias tensed. What about it? The vendor smiled. I was one too. 5 years ago I escaped. Elias leaned forward. How? The vendor glanced around, then whispered. There's a way to disable the nanobots. A code. Voss programmed it into the core system at the stadium lab. Elias' heart pounded. What code? The vendor shook his head. I don't know it, but Voss does. He's the only one who can deactivate them. Elias stepped back, his jaw tightened. Then I'll make him tell me. The woman touched his arm. We have to go, the timer. Elias nodded and turned away from the stall, but the vendor called after him. One more thing, the code changes every hour. You'll need Voss alive to get the current code. Elias stopped, he turned back. Alive? The vendor nodded gravely. If you kill him, the code dies with him. You'll never be free. Elias' fists clenched. He had wanted to end Voss. Now he had to keep him alive. They walked back through the subway tunnels. Elias' mind raced. He had to capture Voss, not kill him. That made everything harder. The red timer ticked mercilessly. They emerged near the old stadium. It loomed against the twilight sky, a massive concrete structure with broken windows and rusted beams. Voss's main lab was hidden beneath it. Elias and the woman found a side entrance. The door was reinforced steel with a digital keypad. Elias looked at the woman. Can you crack it? She pulled out a small device and attached it to the keypad. The device flashed and beeped. The door clicked open. They stepped inside. The stadium interior was dark and abandoned, seats covered in dust, a pitch overgrown with weeds, but beneath it something hummed. They found a service door marked sublevel access. Elias pushed it open. A long staircase descended into glowing green and red light. The hum grew louder. They started down. The staircase ended in a massive underground facility. Rows of computers lined the walls. Voss stood in the center, surrounded by armed guards. He was expecting them. He smiled coldly. I knew you'd find me, Voss said. You're predictable. Elias stepped forward, his hand on the energy pistol. I'm not here to kill you. I need the code. Voss laughed. The deactivation code, you think I'd give it to you? Give it to me or I'll take it from you, Elias said. Voss gestured to his guards. Take them. The guards advanced. Elias drew his pistol and fired. A guard collapsed. The woman launched herself at another. Elias fought through the chaos, making his way toward Voss. A guard swung a baton at his head. Elias ducked and fired. The guard fell. He kept moving. Voss backed away toward a console. Elias reached Voss and grabbed him by the lab coat. The code, give me the code. Voss's eyes were wide with fear. He typed frantically on the console. A string of numbers appeared on the screen. 53-7-21. 9, Voss recited. Elias memorized each number. The woman shouted from behind him, Elias, more guards coming. He had seconds. Voss finished typing. The code is active for another 2 minutes. Type it into your system interface. Now, Elias' hands shook. He focused on the green screen in his vision. He typed the numbers. The green screen flickered. A message appeared, deactivation code accepted. Release nanobots, yes, no. Elia's finger hovered over yes. The woman reached him. Do it now. He pressed yes. A wave of energy pulsed through his body. The green and red specks in his eyes dissolved. The timer screens vanished. His heart pounded once normally, freely, without control. He gasped, the weight lifted from his chest. He was free. He looked at Voss. The man slumped against the console, defeated. Elias released him. The guards had stopped fighting. The woman's eyes also cleared. The green and red specks disappeared. She looked at her hands, then at Elias. A tear rolled down her cheek. It's over, she whispered. Elias looked around the facility. The machines were still humming. We need to shut everything down permanently. Voss nodded weakly. I'll help, I'll destroy it all. They worked together to power down the machines. One by one, the green and red lights went dark. The hum faded. The facility fell silent. Elias watched the last light die. He walked out of the stadium with the woman. The night sky was clear. Stars glittered above. He took a deep breath of clean air. For the first time in days, he felt truly alive. The woman stood beside him. What now, she asked. Elias looked at the city. Lights twinkled in the distance. Now, we live, we find a way to help the others, the ones still trapped. She nodded, a smile spread across her face. That's a good plan. Elias looked at her. I don't even know your name. She held out her hand. Myra, my name is Myra. He shook her hand. Elias, but you already knew that, she laughed softly. I know everything about you, but there's still time to learn more. They walked together into the night, free at last. The city lights reflected in his clear gray eyes. No green, no red, just the spark of life. He was alive, he was free, and he was ready for whatever came next. Myra stopped and looked back at the stadium. He's still in there, Voss. What happens to him? Elias didn't turn around. He lives, but he'll face justice. The system he created will become his prison. She nodded slowly. Poetic, Elias smiled. Maybe, but it's not for us to decide. We did our part. He continued walking. Myra followed. The city hummed around them. They reached a small park. Green grass, benches, a fountain. Elias sat down on a bench and looked up at the stars. Myra sat beside him. The night air was cool and fresh. I spent years running, Myra said quietly. I forgot what it felt like to stop. Elias nodded. I spent my whole life surviving. I don't know what comes next. She looked at him. We figure it out together. He turned to her. You really think we can help the others? Myra nodded firmly. We have to try. No one else knows what they're going through. Elias smiled. Then we do it, one person at a time. They sat in comfortable silence. The fountain gurgled softly. A breeze rustled the leaves. For the first time, the silence wasn't filled with fear or desperation. It was peaceful. Elias' phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You escaped, but the system is bigger than Voss. Others will come for you. Stay ready, friend. He stared at the message. He showed it to Myra. She read it, then looked at him with concern. It's not over, she said. Elias put the phone away. No, but I'm not the same person who drank that bottle. I'm ready for whatever comes. He stood up and offered his hand to Myra. She took it and rose. They walked out of the park together, leaving the stadium and the nightmares behind. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together. Elias pocketed his phone and looked at Myra. The warning message hung in the air between them. He took a deep breath. The system is bigger than Voss. That means there are others out there, others like us. Myra nodded slowly. Her eyes scanned the dark park. We need to find out who sent that message, and we need to find the other participants. Elias' jaw tightened. We start tonight. They walked through the quiet streets toward the city's data district. Massive server towers loomed against the night sky. Security drones patrolled overhead. Elias kept his head down. They reached an old internet cafe with flickering neon signs. Elias pushed open the door. A bell chimed. Inside, a few tired patrons stared at glowing screens. The air smelled of coffee and stale electronics. Elias sat at a terminal in the corner. Myra pulled up a chair beside him. He cracked his knuckles and began typing. His fingers moved fast across the keyboard, searching for traces of the message sender. The screen displayed a series of encrypted IP addresses. None of them led anywhere. The sender had used a ghost network. Elias leaned back in frustration. His clear gray eyes reflected the screen's glow. Myra leaned forward. Try searching for recent disappearances, people who vanished after receiving strange bottles. Elias nodded. He typed a new query. A list of names appeared, 23 people in the last 6 months. He clicked on the first profile. A young woman, 24, last seen near the industrial district. Her eyes in the photo were clear, no green or red, but her file noted she had been found dead 3 days later. Elias scrolled through more profiles. Each one told the same story. Someone received a mysterious bottle, disappeared, and later turned up dead with glowing particles in their eyes. His stomach turned. He looked at Myra. Voss wasn't working alone. Someone else is distributing the bottles. Myra's face darkened. Then we find the distributor. We cut off the source. A new message appeared on the screen. A pop-up window from an unknown sender. You're looking for answers. Meet me at the old pier. Midnight. Come alone or not at all. Friend. Elias stared at the message. His heart pounded. He looked at the clock on the screen. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes to midnight. He stood up abruptly. I have to go. Myra grabbed his arm. I'm coming with you. Elias shook his head. The message said alone. I can't risk it. Myra's grip tightened. Then I'll wait nearby, but I'm not letting you walk into a trap alone. He looked into her eyes, clear gray just like his. No green, no red. He nodded slowly. Okay, stay close. If I don't signal in 20 minutes, come in. They left the cafe and ran through the empty streets toward the pier. The moon was full overhead, casting silver light on the water. The old wooden pier stretched out into the dark lake. Ilias stopped at the entrance to the pier. He turned to Myra. She nodded and melted into the shadows between two storage buildings. He took a breath and walked onto the creaking wooden planks. The pier groaned beneath his weight. The lake lapped gently against the pilings. At the end of the pier, a figure stood silhouetted against the moonlight, tall, thin, wearing a long coat. Ilias approached slowly. His hand hovered near the energy pistol in his pocket. The figure didn't move. When he was 10 meters away, the figure turned. A man with sharp features and tired eyes. He smiled faintly. "You're Ilias," the man said. His voice was rough but calm. "I've been watching you since the stadium. You did what no one else could. You survived." Ilias stopped. "Who are you?" "My name is Darian," the man said. "I was the first, before Voss, before the bottles. I helped design the original nanobot system." His eyes held no glow. "I escaped 12 years ago. I've been fighting ever since." Ilias tensed. "You helped create this nightmare." Darian nodded slowly. "I was young. I thought we were saving the world. I was wrong. Now I'm trying to undo it." "Why did you send the message?" Ilias asked. Darian stepped closer. "Because Voss is only part of the machine. There's a council. 5 people who control the distribution. They call themselves the Overseers." Ilias' fists clenched. "Where are they?" Darian pointed toward the city skyline. "They meet once a month tomorrow night at the Zenith Tower top floor. If you want to stop them, that's your only chance." "And the other participants?" Ilias asked. Darian sighed. "They're scattered across the city. Some are still running, some are dead, but a few are fighting back. I can connect you with them." Ilias studied Darian's face. "Why should I trust you?" Darian laughed quietly. "You shouldn't, but I'm your best chance. I know the code. I know how to permanently disable the system for everyone." He pulled a small data chip from his pocket. "This contains the master deactivation protocol, but you need access to the Zenith Tower mainframe to upload it. That's the only way." Ilias reached for the chip. Darian held it back. "One condition, when you upload it, you save everyone, including the Overseers. No killing. That's the only way to truly end the cycle." Ilias hesitated. The men who had ruined so many lives, who deserved to die. But he remembered Voss's words about the code dying with him. He nodded slowly. "Fine, no killing." Darian handed him the chip. Ilias pocketed it carefully. "Tomorrow night, Zenith Tower, I'll be there." Darian smiled. "I know you will." He turned and walked away into the darkness. Ilias stood alone on the pier. The wind blew across the water. He pulled out his phone and texted Myra. "I'm safe, come out." Within seconds, she emerged from the shadows and ran to him. "Who was that?" she asked breathlessly. Ilias showed her the chip. "A man named Darian. He helped create the system. Now he wants to destroy it. Tomorrow night we finish this." They walked back through the city together. The streets were empty. The moon began to set behind the buildings. Dawn was still hours away. They had one night to prepare. They found a small rooftop overlooking the Zenith Tower. Ilias pulled out a pair of binoculars and studied the building. Guards patrolled the entrance. Security drones circled the perimeter. "There's no way in through the front," Myra said. Ilias scanned the building's sides. "There, a service entrance on the east wall, uncovered. We go in through there." They descended from the rooftop and made their way to the service entrance. It was a plain metal door with a rusted lock. Myra pulled out her lockpicking tools and worked quickly. The lock clicked open. They entered a dark maintenance corridor. Pipes and cables lined the walls. Dust covered the floor. They moved silently, guided by a dim emergency light every few meters. Ilias checked his phone. The data chip was secure. He had one mission left, one chance to free everyone. He felt the weight of every lost participant on his shoulders. They reached a service elevator. Ilias pressed the button. The elevator descended silently. The doors opened onto a dimly lit underground garage, a few parked cars, nothing else. They crossed the garage and found a stairwell leading up. Ilias pushed the door open. They began climbing floor after floor. Their legs burned, but they didn't stop. Finally, they reached the top floor. A massive steel door stood before them. Behind it, the overseers would be meeting. Ilias looked at Myra. She nodded. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Ilias stepped through the steel door into a vast penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. 5 figures sat around a long glass table. They were the overseers, middle-aged, well-dressed, cold eyes. One of them, a woman with sharp gray hair and a stern face, stood up. "You're the one who destroyed Voss's lab. We've been expecting you." Her voice was calm, almost bored. She wore a dark business suit. Ilias walked toward the table. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. He stopped at the opposite end. His clear gray eyes swept across each face. "I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to end this." The woman laughed coldly. "End it? The system has been running for 15 years. You can't just shut it down with a few words." She gestured to the windows. "Hundreds of participants are out there right now." Ilias pulled out the data chip and held it up. "This contains the master deactivation protocol. I upload it to your mainframe and everyone is freed. No more running, no more dying." Another overseer, a man with thick glasses and a nervous twitch, leaned forward. "That's impossible. The protocol requires 3-factor authentication. The chip alone isn't enough." Ilias' jaw tightened. "Then give me the authentication." The woman laughed again. "Why would we do that? You're one man with a chip. We have an army of guards downstairs." As if on cue, the penthouse doors burst open. A dozen armed guards poured in, their weapons trained on Ilias. Myra stepped up beside him, her hands raised defensively. The overseers watched with amusement. Elias didn't flinch, he looked at the woman. You think I came unprepared? I know about the emergency kill switch. If I don't upload the protocol in the next 10 minutes, the switch activates and the system self-destructs, killing every participant. The woman's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Elias stared at her. Am I? Darian told me everything. He helped design the original system. He knows every backdoor, every failsafe. She turned to the other overseers. They exchanged uneasy glances. The man with thick glasses spoke. He might be telling the truth. Darian was one of the original architects. He could have built a kill switch. The woman slammed her hand on the table. Fine, you want authentication, you'll get it, but you'll never leave this building alive. She pressed a button on the table. A holographic keypad appeared. 3 codes, she said. 1 from me, 1 from him, 1 from her. She gestured to 2 other overseers. If any of us refuses, the system locks permanently. You'll be trapped here forever. Elias nodded. Then give me the codes. The woman typed her code on the holographic keypad. A green light flashed. The man with glasses typed his code. A second green light. The third overseer, a pale woman with silver hair, typed hers. 3 green lights glowed on the table. The mainframe access was unlocked. Elias stepped toward the central console. He inserted the data chip. The screen flickered to life. The master deactivation protocol appeared. His finger hovered over the execute button. He looked at Myra, she nodded. He looked at the overseers, their faces were tense. He pressed the button. A progress bar appeared. 1%, 5%, 10%. The room filled with a low hum. The building shook slightly. The progress bar continued climbing. 25%, 40%, 55%. The overseers watched in silence. Sweat formed on Elias' brow. At 75%, alarms blared throughout the building. Red lights flashed. The woman shouted, "What's happening?" Elias stared at the screen. A warning message appeared. Override detected. External force attempting to stop protocol. Someone's trying to stop it, Elias yelled. Myra ran to the window. Below, a convoy of vehicles surrounded the building. Armed figures poured out. "We have company," she shouted. Elias looked at the progress bar. 82%, 87%. The building shook again. Explosions echoed from downstairs. The guards in the room looked panicked. The overseers scrambled to their feet. "Who is it?" the woman demanded. Elias' eyes narrowed. "Voss, he must have survived. He's trying to protect his creation." The progress bar reached 94%, 96%. The building shook violently. The steel doors blasted open. Voss stood in the doorway, flanked by more armed men. His white lab coat was torn and dirty. His face was twisted with rage. "Stop the upload," he screamed. Elias stood between Voss and the console. "It's too late, Voss. The system is ending." The progress bar hit 99%. Voss raised a weapon. Myra lunged forward and knocked it from his hand. The progress bar hit 100%. A soft chime echoed through the room. The screen displayed protocol uploaded, all nanobot systems deactivated, participants freed. The building went silent, the alarms stopped, the flashing lights died. Voss slumped to his knees, his face was hollow. "You've destroyed everything I built," he whispered. Elias looked down at him. "You built a prison, I just unlocked the door." He turned to the overseers. They stood frozen, their power gone. He spoke calmly. "It's over, the systems are dead." The guards lowered their weapons. Confusion spread across their faces. One of them muttered, "The green and red screens, they disappeared." Another nodded. "Mine too, I'm free." Elias realized the guards were participants too. They had been slaves to the system, forced to work for the overseers. He looked at them. "You're free now, all of you, walk away." The guards exchanged glances. One by one they lowered their weapons and walked out of the penthouse. The overseers watched helplessly. Their army had deserted them. Elias turned to Myra. She was breathing heavily but smiling. "We did it," she said. He nodded. "We did." He looked at the overseers. "You'll face justice, but not from me. The authorities are already on their way." The woman with gray hair stared at him. "You'll regret this. The world needs order. Without the system, chaos will follow." Elias shook his head. "Freedom isn't chaos, it's choice. You took that away from people." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Police officers stormed into the penthouse. They surrounded the overseers and Voss. An officer approached Elias. "We received an anonymous tip. Are you the one who called?" Elias nodded. "Yes, they're all yours." The officers handcuffed Voss and the overseers. Voss looked at Elias one last time. His eyes were empty. "You won," he said softly. "But at what cost?" Elias didn't answer. He watched them being led away. Myra stood beside him. The penthouse was empty now, save for the two of them and the vast windows overlooking the awakening city. Dawn broke over the horizon. Golden light spilled across the skyline. The city was waking up. Somewhere out there, hundreds of former participants were realizing they were free. Elias felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He walked to the window and pressed his palm against the glass. His reflection stared back at him, clear gray eyes, no green, no red, just the reflection of a man who had survived. Myra joined him at the window. "What now?" she asked. Elias looked at her. "We help the others, the ones who are still scared, the ones who don't know it's over yet. We find them and tell them they're free." She smiled softly. "That's going to take a while," Elias shrugged. "We've got time." He looked at the rising sun. For the first time in his life, the future was open. No timers, no missions, just possibilities. They left the penthouse and descended through the building. The corridors were empty, the guards were gone, the overseers were in custody, the nightmare was over. They emerged onto the street. The city was alive with morning activity. People walked to work, cafes opened, traffic hummed, life continued, ordinary, beautiful, free life. Elias took a deep breath. The air smelled like coffee and exhaust and morning dew. It was the best smell he had ever experienced, because it was real, because he was alive to breathe it. Myra bumped his shoulder gently. Hungry, he laughed. Starving, she pointed to a small diner across the street. Breakfast is on me, he looked at her. You have money, she grinned. I saved some credits before the system shut down. They walked into the diner and sat in a booth by the window. The waitress came over with a smile. What can I get you? Elias looked at the menu. It was full of normal, ordinary food. He nearly cried. He ordered pancakes and coffee. Myra ordered eggs and toast. They ate in comfortable silence. The food tasted incredible, not because it was fancy, because it was his, because he chose it. The waitress refilled his coffee. You two look like you've been through something, she said kindly. Elias looked at Myra. He smiled. You could say that, but we're okay now. She nodded and walked away. Elias stared out the window. People walked past. Children laughed. A dog wagged its tail. It was everything he had fought for, everything he had almost lost. Myra reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you, she said quietly, for not giving up. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for not letting me give up. They smiled at each other. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out. A message from an unknown number. The system is down, but the bottle distributors are still out there. They won't stop, neither should you, Darian. Elias read the message twice. He showed it to Myra. Her expression shifted. He's right. The distributors are still out there. They'll find a new system, a new way to control people. Elias put the phone away. He looked out the window. The city was beautiful, but somewhere in the shadows, people were still planning, still scheming, still hurting others. He finished his coffee and set the cup down. Then we find the distributors, we stop them too, Myra nodded. One distributor at a time, one bottle at a time, Elias smiled. That's the plan. They paid the bill and left the diner. The sun was fully up now. The city was bright and warm. Elias looked up at the sky, blue, endless, free. He had survived the system, now he would help others do the same. They walked through the streets, blending with the crowd, two ordinary people on an extraordinary mission. Behind them, the Zenith Tower stood silent. The overseers were gone. The nightmare was over. But ahead, new challenges waited, new battles to fight, new lives to save. Elias felt a spark of hope. He had been a prisoner, now he was a guardian. The green and red lights were gone, only the sun remained. Myra looked at him. Where do we start? Elias thought for a moment. We start with Darian. He knows the distributors. He can help us find them. She nodded. Then we find Darian. Elias pulled out his phone and typed a reply to the message. We're in. Where do we meet? The reply came instantly. The old warehouse district. Come at dusk. Darian. He pocketed the phone. Warehouse district, dusk. Myra smiled. Sounds like the beginning of a new adventure. Elias laughed. It's always an adventure with you. She punched his arm playfully. They walked toward the warehouse district. The city changed around them. Glass towers gave way to brick buildings. Streets became narrower. The afternoon sun cast long shadows. They reached the district by late afternoon. Empty warehouses lined the streets. Weeds grew through cracked pavement. The area was abandoned, but there was movement in the shadows. A figure emerged from a doorway. Darian. He wore the same dark coat, his sharp features illuminated by the setting sun. He smiled. You came. Elias stopped. You said you'd help us find the distributors. Darian nodded. I will, but first I need to show you something. He led them into a warehouse. Inside, rows of computers and monitors glowed. Maps covered the walls. Photos of people, distributors were pinned everywhere. This is my operation, Darian said. I've been tracking them for years. There are 12 distributors. They operate in different cities, but they all report to one person, the controller. Elias studied the wall. The controller's photo was in the center, a shadowy figure in a hood, no face visible. Who is it? He asked. Darian shook his head. I don't know, no one does, but you can find out. How? Elias asked. Darian pointed to a map. The distributors meet once a month at a neutral location. Next meeting is in 3 days. You can infiltrate it, get close to the controller. Elias' heart pounded. 3 days. Myra stepped forward. We'll be ready. Darian looked at both of them. I know you will. He handed Elias a small device. Tracking beacon, put it on the controller, we'll follow. Elias pocketed the device. He looked at the photos on the wall, faces of the distributors, people who had traded in lives, who had sold bottles that destroyed families. His anger simmered. We stopped them, Elias said quietly. One by one. Darian nodded. That's the mission. Myra looked at Elias. Together, he nodded. Together. They spent the night planning, studying the distributors' patterns, memorizing faces, learning routes. The warehouse became their headquarters, their base of operations. At sunrise, Elias stepped outside. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. He breathed in the cool morning air. He felt alive. He felt purposeful. Myra joined him. We're really doing this. Elias nodded. We're really doing this. She slipped her hand into his. Good. He squeezed her hand. Good. They stood together watching the sunrise. The battle was far from over, but they would fight it together, one distributor at a time, one life at a time, until everyone was free. Elias looked at his phone. No green screens, no red timers, just the time. He smiled. The future was uncertain, but for the first time it belonged to him. They turned and walked back into the warehouse. The mission awaited. The controller would be found, the distributors would be stopped, and the cycle of fear would finally end. Elias stood inside the warehouse staring at the wall of photographs. His clear gray eyes moved from face to face. Darian handed him a tablet. Your first target, name Kale. He operates in the port district. He's responsible for at least 30 deaths. Elias studied Kale's face on the tablet, a man in his 40s with a scar across his left cheek and cold brown eyes. He wore a dark hoodie in the photo. His expression was emotionless. Elias' jaw tightened. Darian pulled up a map on the main screen. Kale makes his drops at midnight every Tuesday. He uses a boat at Pier 14. Tomorrow is Tuesday. That's our window. He highlighted the route. Myra stepped closer to the screen. What about security? Darian zoomed in on the pier. 2 guards, both former participants. They're loyal to Kale because he pays them. They don't know the system is dead yet. Elias looked at Myra. We go in quiet, take out the guards, capture Kale alive. He knows where the controller is. Myra nodded. I'll handle the guards, you get Kale. Elias smiled grimly. Perfect. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Elias cleaned his energy pistol. Myra sharpened a small knife. Darian provided them with dark tactical gear. The warehouse hummed with quiet intensity. As night fell, Elias and Myra left the warehouse. They wore black tactical vests over dark clothes. Their faces were painted with matte stripes. They moved through the shadows like ghosts. They reached the port district by 11. The water was dark and still. Ships creaked against their moorings. The air smelled of salt and rust. Pier 14 loomed ahead, a wooden structure extending into the black water. Elias crouched behind a shipping container. He studied the pier through binoculars. 2 guards patrolled the entrance. They carried rifles but looked bored. One yawned, the other checked his phone. Myra tapped his shoulder. She pointed to a narrow catwalk running along the side of the pier. It was rusted but accessible. I'll go that way, she whispered. Circle behind them. Elias nodded. I'll move in from the front. He watched her disappear into the darkness. She moved like water, silent and fluid. A few moments later, he saw her shadow on the catwalk. She was in position. He gave a hand signal. Elias stepped out from behind the container. He walked toward the guards with his hands raised slightly. They spotted him immediately. Halt, who goes there? One shouted. Elias didn't stop. The guards raised their weapons. But before they could fire, Myra dropped from the catwalk behind them. She landed silently and struck the first guard's neck. He crumpled. The second guard turned, but Elias was already there, his pistol pressed against the man's temple. Don't move, Elias said quietly. The guard froze. Myra tied his hands and gagged him. Within seconds, both guards were unconscious and hidden behind a stack of crates. Elias and Myra moved onto the pier. A small boat was tied at the end of the pier. A man stood on the deck, his back to them. He wore a dark hoodie. He was counting stacks of credits. Kale. Elias approached silently, his footsteps barely audible on the wooden planks. Kale sensed something. He turned sharply. His cold brown eyes widened when he saw Elias. He reached for a weapon at his belt, but Elias was faster. He lunged forward and grabbed Kale's wrist, twisting it behind his back. Don't move, Elias growled. Kale struggled, but Elias' grip was iron. Myra stepped onto the boat and secured Kale's other wrist. He glared at them. You're the ones who shut down the system, he spat. Elias pushed him against the boat's railing. We shut down Voss. Now we're coming for the controller. You're going to tell us where to find him. Kale laughed bitterly. You think I know? The controller never meets anyone directly. We know about the monthly meeting, Myra said. You attend, you've seen his face. Kale's expression flickered, fear. I don't know his identity, he wears a mask always. Elias studied Kale's eyes. He was telling the truth, but there was something else. You know something else, Elias said. Tell me. Kale hesitated. Myra pressed the knife gently against his ribs. Talk. There's a device, Kale said quickly. A communication device. The controller uses it to send orders. I have one. It's in my pocket. Elias reached into Kale's pocket and pulled out a small black device. It had a single button. Elias examined the device. How does it work? Kale swallowed. You press the button, it sends a signal to the controller's location, but it also alerts him. He'll know you're coming. Elias pocketed the device. Then we use it when we're ready, Elias said. He looked at Myra. We have a lead. She nodded. They secured Kale and called Darian. Within minutes, a van arrived. Kale was taken away for questioning. Elias and Myra stood on the pier watching the water. The night was silent. He pulled out the communication device. This is how we find him, he said. Myra looked at it. But it alerts him he'll be ready. Then we'll be readier, Elias said. He pocketed the device. They walked off the pier into the night. The first distributor was down, but the controller was still out there. The hunt continued. Back at the warehouse, Darian examined the communication device. He hooked it up to his computers. I can trace the signal's destination once it's activated, he said. But we need to be within range, within 2 kilometers. Elias looked at the map. The controller has to be somewhere in the city. We activate the device in a central location and track the signal. Darian nodded. The old museum district, it's the geographic center. They left at dawn. The museum district was quiet and abandoned, old buildings with crumbling facades. Elias and Myra positioned themselves in an empty plaza. Darian was in a van nearby monitoring. Elias pulled out the device. He looked at Myra. She nodded. He pressed the button. A soft beep emitted. They waited. 1 minute passed, 2. Then Darian's voice came through the earpiece. Signal detected, heading east. They ran east through the empty streets. The signal led them to a massive old library. Its windows were dark, its doors were chained, but a side entrance was slightly ajar. Elias pushed it open. They entered. Inside, the library was enormous. Dusty shelves stretched into darkness. The air smelled of old paper and decay. They moved carefully, following the signal on their devices. It led them to the basement. They descended stone stairs. The basement was a vast underground chamber. Old filing cabinets and forgotten books filled the space. In the center, a chair sat alone, empty. A single lamp glowed on a small table. On the table was a note. Elias picked it up. It read, "I knew you'd come. The device was a trap, but you're clever, so I'll give you a chance. Find me at the old opera house. Come alone or everyone dies. The controller." Elias' blood ran cold. He showed the note to Myra. Her face paled. He knew he was waiting for us to use the device. Elias folded the note. "Then we go to the opera house together." Darian's voice crackled through the earpiece. "I'm reading multiple heat signatures near the opera house. He has men, a lot of them." Elias' eyes narrowed. "Then we bring more men. We call every participant we've freed." Myra looked at him. "You want to build an army?" Elias nodded. "Not an army, a family. Everyone who suffered because of the system, they deserve to fight back." She smiled. "Then let's call them." They left the library and returned to the warehouse. Darian made calls. Within hours, former participants began arriving, men and women with clear gray eyes, people who had been slaves to the nanobots. Now they were free, and they were angry. Elias stood before them. 50 people gathered in the warehouse. He looked at their faces. Each one carried scars, but each one also carried hope. "The controller thinks he can trap us," Elias said. "He's wrong. Tonight we trap him." A cheer erupted. Myra stood beside him. Darian nodded from the back. They planned the assault. The opera house would be surrounded. The controller would have nowhere to run. The final battle was about to begin. As night fell, Elias looked at the sky. Stars glittered above. He thought of everything he had lost, everything he had gained. He turned to Myra. "Ready?" She took his hand. "Ready." They walked toward the opera house with their army behind them. Elias raised his fist. The crowd of 50 former participants fell silent. He looked at each face, scarred, tired, but burning with determination. "Tonight we end it. For everyone who suffered, for everyone who died, we take back our city." A roar of approval echoed through the warehouse. Myra stepped forward and handed Elias a communicator. "Darian will coordinate from here. We move in 15 minutes. Elias nodded. He slipped the communicator into his pocket. They moved out under the cover of darkness. 50 figures in black tactical gear poured into the streets. They moved in silence, splitting into squads. Elias led the main group toward the opera house. The building loomed ahead, its domed roof silhouetted against the stars. They surrounded the opera house. Elias positioned his squads at every exit. No one would escape. He looked at Myra. She nodded. He gave the signal. They breached the front entrance with a battering ram. The doors exploded inward. Guards swarmed the lobby. Weapons fire erupted. Elias ducked behind a marble pillar and returned fire. His energy pistol hummed. A guard fell. Another charged. Myra took him down with a precise kick. They pushed through the lobby into the main auditorium. The vast space was filled with rows of red velvet seats. On the stage, a figure stood alone. The controller, a tall woman in a flowing black cloak. Her face was hidden behind a silver mask. Elias stepped forward. The fighting behind him faded. He walked down the center aisle toward the stage. His boots echoed on the marble floor. The controller watched him in silence. The silver mask reflected the dim stage lights. He stopped at the edge of the stage. "It's over," he said. "Your distributors are being arrested as we speak. Your guards are defeated. Come quietly." The controller laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You think you've won." She removed her mask. A woman in her 50s with sharp features and cold green eyes. Her hair was silver-streaked. She looked familiar. Elias' breath caught. "You were in the database, one of the first participants." She smiled bitterly. "I was the first, before Voss, before the nanobots. I created the distribution network. I gave people a choice, serve or die, and they served." Elias' fists clenched. "You enslaved them." "I gave them purpose," she snapped. "Without the system, they were nothing, drifters, losers. I made them fight for something." Elias shook his head. "You made them fear. Fear is not purpose." The controller's eyes narrowed. "You're naive. This city runs on fear. I only organized it." She raised her hand. A device on her wrist glowed red. "This triggers a backup system. In 2 minutes, every former participant's heart stops, even yours." Elias stared at the device. His heart pounded. "You wouldn't. You're a participant too," she smiled. "I found a way to shield myself. I'm immune." She pressed a button. A countdown appeared on a screen above the stage. 159, 158. Elias lunged. He grabbed her wrist and twisted. The device clattered to the floor. She screamed and tried to reach it. Myra appeared from the shadows and kicked it away. The countdown froze at 137. Elias pinned the controller against the stage floor. Her cold green eyes glared up at him. "You can't stop it. Even if you destroy that device, the backup will activate in 12 hours. Elias' jaw tightened. "Then I'll find another way." Myra picked up the device. She examined it. "Darian can disable it, but we need to get it to him." Elias nodded. "Take it. I'll handle her." Myra sprinted toward the exit, the device in her hand. The controller struggled beneath Elias. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "Without the system, chaos will destroy everything." Elias looked down at her. "That's not your decision to make. People deserve to choose their own paths." He tightened his grip. Minutes passed. The remaining guards surrendered. The participants gathered around the stage. They watched Elias hold the controller. A murmur of relief spread through the crowd. They were free. The nightmare was ending. Myra returned breathless. "Darian disabled it. The backup is gone. We're safe." A cheer erupted. Elias released the controller. She slumped to the floor, defeated. Police officers entered and handcuffed her. Elias stood on the stage. The crowd of participants looked at him with hope. He raised his hand. It's done, the systems are dead, the distributors are captured, the controller is defeated, you are free. Cheers filled the opera house, people embraced, tears flowed. Elias watched them, a smile spreading across his face. Myra joined him on stage, she took his hand. We did it, she whispered. He squeezed her hand. We did. They walked out of the opera house together. The night sky was clear, stars glittered above. Behind them, the building echoed with celebration. Ahead, the city stretched out, quiet and peaceful. Elias stopped on the steps. He looked at his hands, no green, no red, just skin and scars and life. He looked at Myra. Her clear gray eyes reflected the moonlight. What now? She asked. He thought for a moment. Now we build something new, a network, a support system for everyone who went through this. She nodded. A family, he smiled. Exactly. They walked through the empty streets. The city was silent, but it was a peaceful silence, the kind that comes after a storm. Elias felt light, he felt free. For the first time, he belonged. They reached a small park, the same park where they had sat before. The fountain still gurgled. The stars still shone. He sat on the bench. She sat beside him. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. He pulled out his phone. No messages, no missions, just the time. He put it away. I spent my whole life running, he said quietly. From nothing, from everything, now I don't know what to do with stillness. Myra leaned against him. You learn, we learn together. He wrapped an arm around her. The night air was cool and fresh. He closed his eyes. He had never felt so at peace. They stayed there until dawn. The sky turned pink and gold. Birds began to sing. The city stirred to life. Elias opened his eyes. The sunrise was beautiful. He had survived to see it. He stood up. Myra rose beside him. They looked at the new day. We have work to do, he said. She nodded. We always will, he smiled. Good, I wouldn't have it any other way. They walked through the awakening city. People were emerging, shops opening, life resuming. Elias watched it all with new eyes. He was part of it now, not a prisoner, not a fighter, just a man. They visited Darian at the warehouse. He was smiling. All traces of the nanobots are gone. The distributors are in custody. The controller is facing trial. It's over. Elias shook his hand. Thank you, Darian. Darian shook his head. No, thank you. You did what I couldn't. You ended it. Elias looked at him. You started it, but you also helped end it. That counts. Darian smiled. Maybe I can finally rest now. Elias and Myra left the warehouse. They walked through the city all day. They visited the pier, the library, the stadium. Each place held memories of fear and pain. Now they held memories of victory. As evening fell, they found themselves at the clock tower, the place where they had first teamed up. Elias looked up at its ancient face. This is where it started, he said. Myra nodded. And where we became partners. He turned to her. Not just partners, he said quietly. She looked at him. What then? He took a breath. Something more if you want, she smiled. I want. They stood in the twilight holding hands. The stars came out, one by one. The city lights flickered to life below them. Elias looked at the vast sky. He felt small, but in a good way, small and connected, part of something bigger. Myra squeezed his hand. What about the others? She asked. The ones who are still scared? Elias nodded. We find them, we tell them it's over, we help them heal. She smiled. That's the best plan yet. They descended the tower and walked back into the city. The night was warm and welcoming. They had a mission, but it was a mission of hope, not fear. They were no longer running. They were building. Elias stopped at the city's edge. The horizon stretched before him. He felt the weight of the past, but also the promise of the future. He looked at Myra, she looked at him. Together, they stepped into the unknown, free at last. Elias and Myra walked through the city as dawn broke. The first rays of sunlight painted the buildings gold. They stopped at a small cafe and ordered coffee. The barista smiled at them. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Elias nodded. The most beautiful. They sat at a table by the window. Elias watched the people passing by, ordinary people, living ordinary lives. He had fought so hard for this. He took a sip of his coffee and felt the warmth spread through his chest. Where do we start? Myra asked. Elias set down his cup. We find the ones who are still hiding, the ones who don't know it's over yet. We go to the places where participants used to gather. Myra nodded. The underground markets, the safe houses. They finished their coffee and left the cafe. The city was fully awake now. Traffic hummed, people laughed. Elias felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was helping others survive. They visited the first underground market, the same place where Elias had bought the energy pistol. The vendor recognized him immediately. You're the one who shut down the system, he whispered. Elias nodded. It's over, tell everyone. The vendor's eyes widened. All of it? Elias smiled. All of it. The nanobots are gone, the overseers are in custody, the controller is defeated. The vendor grabbed his hand and shook it vigorously. Thank you, thank you. Word spread quickly. Former participants emerged from the shadows. They gathered in the market, their faces filled with hope and disbelief. Elias and Myra stood in the center, answering questions, reassuring the frightened. A young woman pushed through the crowd. Her eyes were red from crying. My brother, she said. He's still out there. He ran 3 years ago. I don't know where he is. Elias put a hand on her shoulder. We'll find him. He looked at Myra. She nodded. They would build a network, a system to locate and help every single survivor. No one would be left behind, not anymore. They set up a headquarters in the warehouse. Darian joined them. Together, they created a database of known participants. They cross-referenced names, locations, last sightings. The work was painstaking, but it was meaningful. Days turned into weeks. Elias and Myra worked tirelessly. They visited shelters, hospitals, and community centers. They spoke to anyone who would listen. The message was simple. You are free, you are safe, you are not alone. Slowly, survivors came forward. Some were terrified, some were angry, some had given up hope. Elias listened to each one. He held their hands. He told them his own story. He showed them that healing was possible. One evening, Elias stood on the warehouse rooftop. The city glittered below. Myra joined him. "You've changed," she said softly. He looked at her. "So have you?" She smiled. "We both have." "Sometimes I still feel the nanobots," he admitted. "In my dreams, I wake up and check my eyes." Myra nodded. "Me too, but it gets better. Every day it gets a little better." He took her hand because we have each other. A few weeks later, they received a message. A group of survivors in a neighboring city had heard about them. They were organizing. They wanted to join the network. Elias and Myra traveled to meet them. The group was led by a man named Leo. He had clear gray eyes and a warm smile. "We've been waiting for someone to lead," he said. Elias shook his head. "I'm not a leader. I'm just a survivor who fought back." Leo laughed. "That's exactly what a leader is, someone who fights back." Elias looked at Myra. She nodded. He turned back to Leo. "Then let's fight together, one city at a time." They formed an alliance. The network grew. Survivors from across the region joined. They shared resources, information, and support. The nightmare that had once isolated them now connected them. Elias stood before a new crowd. This time it wasn't 50 people. It was hundreds. He looked at their faces. Each one had a story. Each one had suffered, but each one had survived. "We are not victims," he said. "We are survivors. We are stronger than we were before. We have each other, and we will never be slaves again." The crowd erupted in applause. Myra watched him from the side. Her eyes glistened with pride. He caught her gaze and smiled. She nodded. They had come so far, from two strangers in an alley to leaders of a movement. After the speech, Elias and Myra walked through the crowd. People thanked them, shook their hands, embraced them. It was overwhelming, but it was also beautiful. Every face reminded him why they fought. They found a quiet corner. Elias leaned against the wall and exhaled. "I never imagined this," he said. Myra stood beside him. "Neither did I, but here we are." He looked at her. "Thank you for not giving up on me." She touched his face gently. "I'll never give up on you." He closed his eyes. For a moment there was no fear, no pain, just peace, just her. Months passed. The network became a foundation. They named it the Grey Dawn. A new beginning, a new light. Survivors became counselors. They helped others heal. The cycle of fear was finally broken. Elias and Myra moved into a small apartment. It was humble, but it was theirs. They hung photos on the walls, photos of the team, photos of the survivors, photos of the sunrise over the city. One morning, Elias woke early. He walked to the window. The sun was rising. He pressed his palm against the glass. His reflection stared back at him, clear gray eyes, no green, no red, just light. Myra stirred in bed. "What are you thinking about?" He turned and smiled. "How lucky we are." She sat up. "We made our own luck." He walked back to the bed and sat beside her. "We did together." They spent the day visiting survivors, checking in, offering support. The work was never truly finished, but that was okay. It gave them purpose. It gave them meaning. That evening they returned to the park. The same bench, the same fountain. Elias sat and looked up at the stars. Myra sat beside him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. After a long silence, Elias spoke. "I want to tell you something." Myra looked at him. "What?" He took a breath. "I love you." Her eyes widened. Then she smiled. "I love you too." He pulled her close. They stayed in the park until the stars faded and the sun rose. A new day, a new beginning. Elias looked at the horizon and felt peace. He was no longer running. He was home. The gray dawn grew. It spread to other cities, other countries. Survivors found each other. They built communities. They built lives. The system that had tried to destroy them had united them. Elias became a symbol, not of power but of hope. He spoke at events. He shared his story. He never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the people who didn't survive. Myra became the heart of the foundation. She organized. She coordinated. She listened. Together, they created something beautiful out of the ashes of their nightmares. Years passed. The city changed. New buildings rose. Old ones were renovated, but the memories remained. Elias walked through the streets and remembered every battle, every fear, every victory. He visited the stadium, the lab, the alley where he first met Myra. Each place held a story. Each place held a lesson. He carried them all in his heart. One day, a young man approached him on the street. "Are you Elias?" the man asked. Elias nodded. The man smiled. "I was a participant too. You saved my life." Elias shook his hand. "No, you saved yourself. I just opened the door." The man laughed. "That's what I tell everyone. The door was always there. You just showed us how to open it." Elias felt a warmth spread through him. He had done what he set out to do. He had made a difference. That evening, he stood on the rooftop of the Grey Dawn headquarters. The city was spread out before him, beautiful, alive, free. Myra joined him. "It's a good view," she said. He nodded. "The best." She slipped her hand into his. "What do you think the future holds?" Elias looked at the sky. "I don't know, but whatever it is, we'll face it together." She squeezed his hand. "Always." The stars came out, one by one. Elias watched them. He thought of everyone who had been lost, everyone who had been saved, everyone who was still fighting. He made a silent promise he would never stop. They descended from the rooftop and walked into the city. The streets were alive with laughter and music. A festival was happening. People danced. Children played. It was everything they had fought for. Elias and Myra joined the crowd. They danced. They laughed. They were just two people in a sea of people, ordinary, free, happy. The nightmare was a distant memory. As midnight approached, Elias pulled Myra aside. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." She looked at him curiously. "What?" He knelt down on one knee. "Will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, yes. He slipped a simple ring onto her finger. She pulled him into an embrace. The festival continued around them, but for them the world had stopped. They were married a few months later. A small ceremony by the fountain in the park. Survivors from across the country attended. Darian gave a toast. Leo was the best man. The day was perfect. Elias watched his bride walk toward him. She was radiant. Her dress was simple and beautiful. Her eyes were clear gray, full of love, full of hope. He felt tears in his own eyes. I promise to stand by you, he said during his vows. Through every sunrise and every storm, I promise to always remind you that you are loved, that you are not alone, that you are free. She smiled through her tears. And I promise to do the same. Together we are unstoppable. They kissed. The crowd cheered. The gray dawn had found its heart. Years later, Elias sat on the same park bench. He was older now. His hair had streaks of gray, but his eyes were still clear, still bright. Myra sat beside him. Their children played by the fountain. He looked at his family, his friends, his city, everything he had fought for, everything he had built. He smiled. The green and red lights were long gone. Only light remained. Years passed like gentle waves. Elias and Myra watched their children grow. Their son Kai had his mother's dark hair and his father's clear gray eyes. Their daughter Lena was a whirlwind of laughter and curiosity. Kai was 16 when he first asked about the nanobots. Did you really have green and red lights in your eyes? Elias nodded slowly. Yes, but we fought to get rid of them so you would never have to see them. Lena at 14 was more interested in the gray dawn. She helped her mother organize files and talk to survivors. I want to help too, she said. Myra smiled. You already do every day. The gray dawn had expanded beyond the city. There were chapters in 20 different countries. Elias traveled occasionally to speak at conferences, but his heart always pulled him home. One evening, a familiar face appeared at the warehouse. Darian. He was older now, his hair completely silver, but his eyes still held that same tired wisdom. Elias, I have news. Elias set down his coffee. What kind of news? Darian pulled out a tablet. We found a new pattern. People in 3 cities are reporting strange disappearances, the same signs, the same fear. Elias' jaw tightened. Myra joined them. Her clear gray eyes scanned the data. Is it the nanobots again? Darian shook his head. No, something new, a different kind of control system. They're calling it the thread. Elias studied the reports. People were being approached with a choice, wear a small silver thread around their wrist and gain wealth, power, and protection. But the thread tightened every time they disobeyed. It's like the nanobots all over again, Myra whispered. Elias looked at her. Then we stop it before it spreads. We know how to fight this. Darian nodded. There's a meeting tomorrow. The distributors of the thread are gathering. Elias looked at his children. Kai and Lena were watching from the doorway. We're coming with you, Kai said firmly. Elias started to refuse, but Myra touched his arm. They're old enough and they deserve to know the fight. Elias relented. He looked at his children. You stay close to your mother. You follow every order. Understood? Both nodded. Lena's clear gray eyes sparkled with determination. They set out at dawn. The family traveled together for the first time. Elias drove the van. Myra navigated. Kai and Lena studied the files in the back. The Grey Dawn's new generation was rising. They reached the meeting location, an old theater on the outskirts of the city. Darian's informant had confirmed the distributors would be inside. Elias parked the van a block away. Remember, Elias said, looking at his children, we're here to gather information, not to engage, not to fight. We watch, we learn, we leave. Kai nodded. Lena's expression was serious. Understood. They approached the theater from the rear. Elias and Myra entered through a side door. Kai and Lena waited in the shadows, communicating via earpieces. The theater was dark and musty. Inside, a dozen figures sat in the front rows. They wore dark suits. On each wrist, a silver thread glinted. In the center, a man addressed them. The thread is the future. The old system failed because it was too visible. We are invisible. Elias listened from behind a curtain. The man continued. We offer freedom, but we control it. Those who follow us prosper. Those who resist, disappear. Elias' blood boiled. He remembered the same words from different lips. Myra squeezed his hand. Her eyes told him to stay calm. He took a deep breath and continued listening. The man outlined their distribution network. It was sophisticated, widespread. Kai's voice came through the earpiece. Dad, there are more of them coming. I count at least 20. They're surrounding the theater. Elias' heart raced. They had been set up again. We need to move, Elias whispered. Myra nodded. They slipped back through the side door and met their children in the alley. They know we're here, Elias said. We have to leave now. They ran through the dark streets. Footsteps echoed behind them. Elias looked back. The distributors had emerged from the theater, their silver threads glinting in the moonlight. They were gaining. Kai grabbed Lena's hand and pulled her forward. Elias and Myra flanked their children. They ducked into a narrow passage between buildings. The footsteps grew louder. They were trapped. Elias turned to face their pursuers. Stay behind me, he commanded. Myra stood beside him, ready. The distributors rounded the corner, 5 of them. Their leader stepped forward, a woman with cold silver eyes. You're Elias Gray, she said. The one who destroyed the nanobots. We've been waiting for you. Elias' hands clenched. I destroyed one system, I'll destroy another, she laughed. You're outnumbered. Kai stepped forward. Not anymore. From the shadows behind the distributors, figures emerged. Survivors, Grey Dawn members. They had followed the family. The distributors were surrounded. The woman's eyes widened. Ilias smiled grimly. Seems like you're the one outnumbered. He raised his hand. The Grey Dawn members advanced. The distributors surrendered without a fight. Ilias walked to the woman. Tell me everything about the thread. Who created it? Where is the central hub? She hesitated. Then she spoke. There's a facility under the old hospital. The master controls everything. Ilias nodded. Then that's our next target. He looked at his family. His children's eyes were wide, but not with fear, with determination. They were ready. They returned to the warehouse. The Grey Dawn members gathered. Darien coordinated. Plans were drawn. The old hospital would be infiltrated. The master would be captured. The thread would be cut. Kai and Lena volunteered for the mission. Ilias tried to refuse, but Myra stopped him. They need to fight. It's who they are. He looked at his children. Stay close and stay alive. They left at midnight. The hospital was abandoned, or so it seemed. Inside, lights flickered. Machinery hummed. The facility was very much active. Ilias led the team through the basement entrance. They descended into the heart of the operation. Rows of computers, silver threads hanging from hooks. In the center, a figure sat in a chair. The master, a man with pale skin and dead eyes. You came, the master said. His voice was hollow. I've been waiting for you to find me. Ilias stepped forward. The thread ends tonight. The master smiled a horrible, empty smile. It never ends, it only changes form. Ilias raised his weapon. Then we'll change it back. The master pressed a button. Alarms blared, but Ilias was faster. He knocked the button from the master's hand. Myra secured him. The Grey Dawn members swarmed the facility. Computers were shut down. Silver threads were destroyed. The master was taken into custody. The threads network collapsed in a single night. Ilias stood in the center of the facility. The hum of machines faded. The lights went dark. He looked at his children. Kai and Lena stood with their mother, their faces proud. This is what we fight for, Ilias said quietly. Not for revenge, not for power, for freedom, for the right to choose. Kai nodded. Lena's eyes shimmered. I understand now, Dad. They emerged from the hospital as the sun rose. The sky was painted with gold and pink. Ilias looked at his family, his wife, his children, his comrades. He had never been happier. Years later, the Grey Dawn continued its work. New threats emerged, old enemies resurfaced, but each time they faced them together, the family grew stronger, the network grew wider. Ilias sat on the park bench one last time. He was old now. His hair was white, but his eyes were still clear, still bright. Myra sat beside him, her hand in his. Their grandchildren played by the fountain. He looked at the sky. The sun was setting. He felt a deep, peaceful calm. He had lived a full life. He had loved deeply. He had fought bravely, and he had won. Myra squeezed his hand. Are you ready? He nodded. I've been ready for a long time, she smiled. Then go, I'll be right behind you. He closed his eyes and smiled. The green and red lights were long gone. Only light remained, and love. Ilias opened his eyes. He was in a garden. Sunlight streamed through white blossoms. He stood up slowly, feeling lighter than he had in years. He looked around. The garden was vast and beautiful. He heard laughter. He walked through the garden. Flowers bloomed in every color. A gentle breeze carried their scent. He saw figures in the distance. Faces he recognized, faces he had lost. They smiled and waved. He approached them. A woman with kind eyes stepped forward. She was young with dark hair and clear gray eyes. She smiled. You did well, Ilias. He knew her. She was one of the first participants, the one who hadn't survived. How'd he asked. Where am I? She gestured to the garden. This is where we go, where we wait, where we remember. He looked around. There was no fear here, only peace. You saved so many, she said. We've been watching, all of us. You carried our memory with you. Ilias felt tears in his eyes. I tried to honor everyone. She touched his face gently. You did. He walked deeper into the garden. He saw more faces. The young woman from the library records, the man who had helped him in the market, faces of the lost. Each one smiled at him. Each one thanked him. He came to a bench in the middle of the garden. He sat down. The sun was warm. The flowers swayed. He felt a presence beside him. He looked. Myra sat next to him. She was young again, beautiful, radiant. Did you find me? He asked. She smiled. I always find you. He took her hand. Are we? She nodded. Yes, but it's not the end. It's just a new beginning. He looked at the garden. It was endless. They sat in silence, hand in hand. The garden stretched forever. There was no pain, no fear, no systems, just love, just light, just each other. Back in the park, their grandchildren played by the fountain. Kai and Lena sat on the bench where their parents had once sat. They looked at the sunset. Their children laughed and ran. She's gone, Lena said softly. Kai nodded. But she was ready. They both were. He looked at his sister. They built something that will last forever. Lena smiled. The Grey Dawn will never die. A young woman approached them, one of the new Grey Dawn leaders. We need you at the headquarters. There's a new development. Kai stood up. What kind of development? She handed him a tablet. On the tablet was a message. We are survivors. We heard your story. We want to join the Grey Dawn. We want to carry the light. Kai smiled. Then we welcome them. That's what our parents would have wanted. He looked at the fountain. The water sparkled in the evening light. He thought of his father, his mother, all they had sacrificed, all they had built. He felt their presence beside him. Lena joined him. What do we tell them? Kai turned to her. We tell them the truth, that freedom is a choice, that fear can be overcome, that hope is always worth fighting for. They walked back to the Grey Dawn headquarters together. The night was warm. The stars were bright. They carried their parents' legacy forward. They would not let it die. Inside the headquarters, young survivors gathered, faces filled with hope. Kai addressed them. Welcome to the Grey Dawn. You are not alone. You are never alone. We are family. Lena spoke next. We have been through darkness, but we found light, and we will share that light with everyone who needs it. The crowd applauded. The Grey Dawn continued. Years turned into decades. The Grey Dawn became a global movement. New threats emerged, but they were met with courage. The survivors had become guardians. The guardians had become legends. Kai and Lena grew older. They passed the leadership to the next generation. They sat on the same park bench where their parents had once sat. They watched their grandchildren play. It never really ends, does it? Lena asked. Kai shook his head. No, but that's not a bad thing. It means we always have a reason to keep going. She smiled. Mom and Dad would be proud. The sun set over the city, gold and red, beautiful and warm. Kai closed his eyes. He felt a familiar presence. His mother's hand on his shoulder, his father's voice in his ear. Well done, son. He opened his eyes. Lena was crying softly. Did you feel that? She whispered. He nodded. They're still here. They'll always be here. She wiped her tears. We have to tell the children. They called their family together. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren gathered in the park. Kai stood before them. Your ancestors built this world. They fought so you could be free. Never forget that. He told them the story. The nanobots, the missions, the escape pod, the clock tower, the zenith tower, the war, the victory, the Grey Dawn. He told them about Elias and Myra, their love, their courage. And now, Lena said, the legacy passes to you. All of you, carry it forward, protect each other. Choose freedom, choose love, choose hope. The children listened. Their eyes shone with understanding. They were young, but they knew they were part of something bigger. They were the future of the Grey Dawn. That night, Kai stood alone in the garden behind the Grey Dawn headquarters. It was a small garden, but it held a bench, a fountain, white blossoms, just like the garden his parents had described. He sat down. He looked at the stars. Thank you, he whispered, for everything. A warm breeze rustled the blossoms. He smiled. He knew they had heard him. Years later, a statue was erected in the city center. Elias and Myra standing hand in hand, looking toward the sunrise. Below it, words were carved. They showed us that freedom is always worth fighting for. Survivors from all over the world came to visit. They left flowers, they left notes, they left their gratitude. The statue became a symbol of hope, a reminder that darkness could be defeated. The Grey Dawn continued to grow. New leaders emerged. New battles were fought. But the foundation remained the same: love, courage, and the unshakable belief that every person deserves to be free. On the anniversary of the nanobots' destruction, the city held a festival. People danced in the streets. Music filled the air. Children laughed. The Grey Dawn was celebrated. Kai and Lena, now elderly, watched from the park bench. Their grandchildren played around them. They held hands. We did it, Lena said. Kai nodded. We kept the promise. A young girl approached them. She had clear gray eyes and dark hair. Are you the ones who started the Grey Dawn? She asked. Lena smiled. Our parents did, but we helped. The girl's eyes widened. Can you tell me their story? Kai looked at Lena. She nodded. He began to speak. The story of the green and red lights, the missions, the love, the victory. The girl listened spellbound. When he finished, she asked, what happened to them? Kai smiled. They found peace, they found each other, and they never stopped believing in hope. The sun set over the city. The girl ran off to tell her friends the story. Kai and Lena watched her go. The Grey Dawn was safe. The legacy would live forever. That night, Kai dreamed of the garden. He walked through white blossoms. He saw his parents waiting for him. They smiled. You did well, son, Elias said. We are so proud, Myra added. Kai wiped the tears from his face and stood up from the window. The morning sun bathed the city in gold. He walked to the Grey Dawn headquarters, his heart full. Lena was already there, organizing files. We need to expand the outreach program, Lena said without looking up. 3 more cities have requested our help. Kai nodded. Then we send teams to every corner. He sat beside her and began to work. Days turned into weeks. The Grey Dawn's reach extended further. New survivors were found, new allies were made. The network grew stronger. The promise of Elias and Myra lived on in every act of kindness. One afternoon, Kai received a letter, handwritten on yellowed paper. He opened it carefully. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. To the children of Elias and Myra, it read, I was there at the beginning. I helped your father. Now I am old and dying. I want to see you one last time. Darian. Kai showed the letter to Lena, her eyes filled with tears. We have to go to him. Kai nodded. We leave tonight. They traveled to the coast where Darian had retired to a small cottage by the sea. Darian was frail, his silver hair thin, his eyes still sharp but tired. He smiled when he saw them. You look like your father, he said to Kai. And you have your mother's fire, he said to Lena. They embraced him gently. I wanted to tell you, Darian said, that I'm proud of you, of everything you've built. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but you made it right. Kai squeezed his hand. You helped make it right, Darian. You were there. Darian coughed weakly. The thread, the distributors, the new threats, I've been tracking them. There's one more, a hidden cell deep in the mountains. They're planning something big. He handed Kai a small data chip. Kai studied the chip. We'll handle it, Darian smiled. I know you will, you're your father's son. He closed his eyes. Now let me rest, I'm so tired. Lena kissed his forehead. Rest, old friend. Darian passed away that night peacefully in his sleep. Kai and Lena buried him on the cliff overlooking the sea. They stood in silence as the waves crashed below. He helped start this, Kai said. Now he's gone. Lena put her hand on his shoulder. But his work continues, the work of everyone who fought. We carry them with us. Kai nodded. He looked at the ocean. Let's go find that hidden cell. They returned to the city and assembled a team. The data chip contained coordinates, schedules, and names. The hidden cell was led by a woman named Sira. She had been a protege of the original controller. We go in quietly, Kai said. We gather information, we dismantle from within. The team nodded. Lena studied the plans. There's an entry point through an old mining tunnel. It's risky, but it's our best chance. They traveled to the mountains. The air was cold and thin. Snow capped the peaks. They found the mining tunnel entrance hidden behind a waterfall. Kai led the way, his breath misting in the cold. Inside the tunnel was dark and damp. Water dripped from the ceiling. They moved slowly, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. After an hour, they emerged into a massive underground complex. The complex was filled with technology. Screens lined the walls, silver threads hung from hooks. In the center, a woman stood, her back to them, Sira. She turned slowly. She had cold blue eyes and a cruel smile. I've been waiting for you, Sira said. The children of the great Elias Gray, I've heard so much about your parents. Kai stepped forward. This ends now, surrender your operation, Sira laughed. You're just like your father. Kai's jaw tightened. I'll take that as a compliment. Sira raised her hand. Alarms blared. Armed guards emerged from the shadows, but Kai's team was ready. They engaged the guards, their training and determination unmatched. Kai fought his way towards Sira. She was faster than she looked, dodging his strikes. He cornered her against a console. It's over, he said. She sneered. It's never over. There's always another system, another controller. Lena appeared beside him. Then we'll stop them all, every time. Sira's sneer faded. She saw the determination in their eyes. She surrendered. The guards followed suit. The hidden cell was dismantled. Kai looked at the screens. They were filled with plans for a new system. He deleted every file. He smashed every machine. The threat was neutralized. He stood in the silence of the ruined complex. I wish they could have seen this, Kai said quietly. Lena stood beside him. They did, they're always watching. He nodded. Let's go home. They left the complex and emerged into the mountain sunlight. Back in the city, they reported to the Grey Dawn. The news spread. Another victory, another battle won. The people celebrated. Kai and Lena accepted the praise humbly, always crediting their parents. That evening, Kai returned to the park. He sat on the bench and looked at the fountain. A young boy approached him. Are you the leader of the Grey Dawn? The boy asked. Kai smiled. I'm one of them. The boy's eyes widened. Can I be one too when I grow up? Kai put his hand on the boy's shoulder. You already are, just by believing in hope, just by choosing kindness. The boy beamed and ran off to play. Lena joined him on the bench. You're good with children, she said. Kai laughed. I learn from the best. She looked at the stars. Do you think they're watching us right now? He nodded. Every second. Years passed. Kai and Lena grew old. Their grandchildren became the new leaders of the Grey Dawn. The organization continued to thrive. The city prospered. The nightmares were ancient history. On his deathbed, Kai smiled. His children and grandchildren gathered around him. Lena held his hand. Tell them, he whispered. Tell them the story, the green and red lights, the missions, the love. Lena squeezed his hand. I will, I promise. Kai closed his eyes. I can see them now, Mom, Dad, they're waiting for me. A peaceful smile crossed his face. He was gone. Lena buried him beside their parents in the small garden. The bench, the fountain, the white blossoms. She planted a new tree in his memory. You'll always be here, she said, with all of us. Lena lived many more years. She continued to lead the Grey Dawn with grace and wisdom. She told the story of Elias and Myra to every new generation. She kept their memory alive. On her own final day, she sat on the park bench, the same bench where her parents had sat, where her brother had sat. She closed her eyes and felt them all around her. She smiled and whispered, I'll see you soon. And then she was gone. The park remained. The fountain continued to flow. The blossoms continued to bloom. The legacy was eternal. The Grey Dawn became more than an organization. It became a symbol, a beacon of hope, a reminder that darkness can always be overcome by light. The story of Elias and Myra was told in every language. Children learned about the green and red lights in school. They learned about courage and sacrifice. They learned that one person or two or many could change the world. The statue in the city center became a pilgrimage site. People came from all over the world. They left flowers, they left prayers, they left their gratitude. The love never faded. Generations passed, the world changed. New challenges arose, but the Grey Dawn remained, adapting, evolving, and always fighting for freedom. The spirit of Elias and Myra was immortal. One evening, a young girl sat on the park bench. She had clear gray eyes and dark hair. She was reading a book about Elias and Myra. Her mother sat beside her. They were real, you know, her mother said. I know, the girl said, and I want to be like them. I want to help people. Her mother smiled. Then you already are. The girl closed the book and looked at the fountain. She felt a warmth in her heart. The sun set over the city. The fountain sparkled. The blossoms swayed. And somewhere in a garden beyond the stars, Elias and Myra watched. They smiled. They were proud. The light would never fade.